Hello and welcome to Scilence, a podcast where women get really honest about surviving and thriving in what often feels like a man's world. My guests are wonder women from the fields of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM, where inclusivity and diversity can be a real problem. I know this only too well as a female Southeast Asian mechanical engineer. I'm kind of a minority within a minority. I'm Dr. Shini Somara, an engineer turned broadcaster. Throughout my career, I've worked on and reported on some cutting-edge technology and innovation, and through my TV work, I've met some incredibly inspiring women from a diverse range of STEM fields. Talking to these exceptional ladies has often left me feeling empowered, hopeful, and excited about life. I believe that Scilence will enrich you too. Every week, a woman in STEM shares her unique experiences, with absolutely no pressure in having to promote her accomplishments or guard her impressive reputation. Because I've come to realise that everyone is just way more open and relaxed when they're anonymous. So I deliberately disguise my guest voices so that we're just connecting as human beings rather than human doings. It's my hope that you really relate to what we chat about today. And if so, please do subscribe to Scilence and maybe even rate and review the show. I'd love to have your feedback. This week, my guest is in the field of technology. Hi.
Hi, Shini. Thank you for having me.
How are you? Thank you for coming on the show.
I'm good. Very excited to join your amazing podcast. Heard so much fun.
Thank you. I was kind of intrigued that, technology is such a gigantic, all-encompassing label. How do you fit into the technological world?
I think I've taken the back route in. I would almost consider myself slightly a fraud in that I didn't study technology at university. In fact, I did try and do the science as well as a secondary school, but very much your stereotypical case of this education system not really supporting me. I grew up in Nigeria, and back there, I was sort of pushed into the social sciences. I sort of had a wobble with chemistry and physics, but I really loved biology. And I was told, well, you kind of have to do all three. And really, I just kept thinking, if you'd encouraged me, I probably would have ended up, going down the science route because I really, really have always been fascinated by how, things happen and chemicals and just how you can create such magic, in the world of science. So yeah, I ended up on the route of economics, and then fast forward to my 30s, after having kids and having gone through a career in banking, I started working with technology companies, and that was sort of a nice reintroduction. And I think it really sparked something in me, and I wanted to learn more. And suddenly found that a lot of the resources available to learn. I mean, there was loads of online material, but in person, nothing was catered to mothers. And if you have small children and you wanted to go in and learn something while you're on a maternity leave, there just wasn't any resource available for you to do that and find a network of people to learn with. So I created one, while I was on maternity leave. So yeah, that came in by the back route, and created a coding school for moms. And I think that was a very steep learning curve into what is technology. I mean, I thought I knew, but at a very surface level. But I suddenly found myself learning about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and really wanting to empower other women to sort of feel like they could learn as well. And sort of how I ended up in the world of tech. And I think that's why I love that the term is quite broad, and you don't have to be, someone who studied engineering. You have an interest in tech and participate in other ways. You can work in product or even marketing, but you're still working in tech, and you can still be a woman in tech just by the very curious nature that you have in the industry.
Yeah, what I love about the T in STEM is that it really does open the gates wide for anyone to join the STEM community, because you can come in via apprenticeships, curiosity, creativity, ingenuity, and the other letters, the science, the engineering and maths, are much more sort of academic and sort of research based.
Absolutely.
And
I forgot to say I was very good at maths. So I guess maybe I slightly deserve to be a woman. And
yeah,
I loved maths. I did it up to A levels and I did pretty good at it. Yeah.
yeah,
So
and you need maths, don't you, for economics and banking, and you need to have that
absolutely.
rational mind.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of people may not even realize, but they have that logical mindset, which ultimately helps, with things like coding, although, there's a lot of debate that coding is not the only way of categorizing yourself as a techie. There are many
Mm.
other amazing skills you can have.
So, how have you found um, mothers have taken to coding? I mean, you yourself have done so much in your short life, like, career focused, become a mother. Like, what is it like for mothers going into tech?
A lot of mums in particular, find that, maternity leave or, if they stay at home mums, it's a nice time to reflect on a career change. And everyone is really conscious about technology. There's a lot more awareness, whether it comes through the schools if they've got older kids, coding's on the national
Mm,
curriculum, it was put on, I think, probably the year I started. Getting into it. I think it was probably back in 2015. There was a lot more awareness, and there were loads of code camps, and I think it suddenly became more mainstream. So there's suddenly so many resources, and people are naturally curious and realize it's a nice time to reflect. I think a lot of tech companies are really pushing the agenda for an increased diversity in their workforce. So we're seeing more women participate. Companies like ThoughtWorks have put out scholarships with Makers Academy. So it's now is the time. It's a great time to increase the numbers. I mean, we all know the numbers are pretty dire.
mm,
I think it's like 17% women in tech. So if that can come through mums who naturally are sort of eliminated from the workforce after having kids because of lack of flexibility in their working patterns, I think technology offers a really unique way back in because by the very nature of it, most companies end up being flexible, being able to use tools such as Slack and Trello, and you can, in theory, work remotely with a lot of the jobs.
yeah,
And the culture, I think, especially in the startup world, is just way more flexible. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
there's no presenteeism, and I think it's a good time. It's a really good
yeah.
time to get people excited about joining the world of tech.
It's really exciting generally. I mean, let's break this
I think
down.
so.
As
Mhm.
a mum, is it true to say that you need flexibility in order to have a career and be a mother?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's impossible otherwise. I mean, just the very the very logistics of it. You have the school run, whether your child's in nursery or is at school, ultimately that kid has to get there. So if you're lucky, you can drop off at 8 o'clock. So you can't get into a really conventional job that needs you there at 9 on the dot.
Mm,
The chances
yeah,
are you're not going to make it. So just, starting from the very beginning, just the drop off, then the pickup, schools end
yeah,
at 3:15. So I think if you don't have a company culture that appreciates that is necessary, that people just need to get the job done. I think that's the very basic. As long as they get the job done, however they need, um, then you're more likely to attract the right people into those roles because there's so many talented women who have just dropped out of the workforce completely. I think
mm,
there were stats that showed, at least 54,000 women were just not working but wanted to,
yeah.
but only because
And have the skills.
absolutely. We're talking about seriously talented women who, for some reason, their former employers just have not been supportive in getting them back in, and also not willing to appreciate the fact that people change during that time off.
Yeah.
I changed a lot. I suddenly had this desire to work in a company where there was purpose,
Mm,
and if I was going to be spending time away from my children, it really needed to be something that was where I felt I was really moving the needle. And I think that's sometimes quite tough to get in a very large organization. I think when you're running a startup, it's amazing because suddenly, or you work for yourself, you have this amazing freedom. And we spoke about this earlier briefly, just that ability to be creative and to do things your way, have that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that's something that often gets sparks. I think a lot of women end up starting their business while they're on maternity leave. There's a couple of papers that have looked into it. It's just you suddenly find that creativeness within you, and you have time. You have time to process. I say that you have time, but kids are hard work. But you do suddenly find a bit of
Yeah.
mental space away from your normal day-to-day corporate role, where you're often put in a bit of a silo.
Is it fair to say that there was a bit of a resistance to employing women after childbirth because somehow their skills were outdated or redundant? I mean, almost like a
A maternity penalty. Yeah,
yeah. Oh my god, what a
yeah.
great phrase. Yeah.
Yes, I think there is often a feeling that, well, definitely from the woman's perspective, you often feel that your skill sets are lost a bit. And from personal experience, going back after my first child, honestly, hand on heart, I feel like I'd been massively de-skilled. So that was my personal experience, and that was mainly because I sort of threw myself into motherhood, wholeheartedly, and
Mm.
I think I sort of abandoned that part of my brain that had.
So it's kind of
It
factual.
is. I mean, they literally call it the pregnancy brain. Where your brain goes to mush, and that's not to say it can't be rebuilt. It's just that for a while, I mean, your body goes through so much. Just trying to bring this child into the world. So much of your energy and your resources are literally going into creating this human. And childbirth is exhausting. We all know that, and in we I think we don't give ourselves enough time to really heal and come back into the workforce. We can't be that same person, and I think that's where you almost need an orientation program to help women get back in, and that's why I love returnships. I think they're the best thing that happened because it gives you an opportunity to sort of relearn the basics because you do have to, and I think you need to keep the brain active. And I think that's what I was very conscious of second time round, that you do need to keep learning in some way because otherwise that part of the brain just really really slows down, and it does affect your confidence. And I think it makes it harder to reintegrate into the workforce if you've lost that confidence. And the challenge also is that your colleagues believe that you're the same person that left, especially those who haven't necessarily kept in touch with you during your time off. So they haven't seen how much of a transition you've been through. So they expect you to come in and slot back in. And that's often just not possible because you're a different person, whether we want to believe it or not. With new challenges, you suddenly have a human that's relying on you. And as much as you love your job, there's always going to be that other responsibility, which frankly, to me especially, and I'm sure a lot of mums will say this, they come first. And that's often hard for an organization to accept. And I think obviously they want you to be completely dedicated, be wonderful employees, but you have a human being that's relying on you, and yeah, and they're suddenly the priority. And I think that's often a tough pill to swallow for organizations. But it doesn't mean that the woman coming back is less dedicated than before or doesn't love her job.
Just
But
different priorities.
exactly. And I think that's okay. And I think if it was embraced more and we had more organizations sort of really embracing parenthood, which some do very well, with family days, bring your child to work. I mean, I do this. I take my kids to work,
Mm.
during half term, only because I think it's super important that they get to know where I spend my time, and then also I want my employers to know a bit about them.
Yeah.
So it's not like a faceless experience. So when I say, this person's sick, you know what that person looks like. And I think the more that becomes a normality in organizations where, you know, family can't really be separated from work. And I really believe in the whole bring yourself to work. Um,
Yes.
I,
I
I
mean, it's
think
about transparency, isn't it?
I think so. I think if we embrace, wholeheartedly people and all the different facets, I think, we would
Mm.
have more. beautiful workplaces, where people feel genuinely comfortable, and then they're really their best selves at work.
Yeah, and there's probably less burnout because
100%.
this idea of like showing this alpha side of you doesn't
It
last.
really doesn't. I'm so against that. I've never been the kind of person who needs to be that tough one at work. I'm so vulnerable. I think for me, like,
Mm.
my secret weapon, and the reason I've been so successful in sort of getting into the world of tech, was just being fully authentic. Just taking my babies
Mm,
into meetings with senior execs at companies like Microsoft, and they were
gosh,
totally unfazed. First meeting,
were they well behaved?
sometimes, but you know what? And that was my litmus test. It really was. If the people didn't get it and didn't embrace the kids, I didn't want to work with them, because if I was going to be doing a program where I'd be bringing 15 more kids and you couldn't handle the two I brought, there's no point. so so for me, that, and they all were. I mean, I never had an issue with any corporate that I took my kids into. And for me, that was amazing. Just knowing that the rest of the kids would be welcoming. And if I was bringing mothers who are vulnerable and needing to feel comfortable, it was important that I really made sure I was working with the right people.
Mm. I mean, let's get
Yeah,
this into context because there may be people, maybe even men
yeah.
listening to this thinking, oh my God, that would never, ever work, having kids in a boardroom. But I mean, why was it important to have that kind of transparency for the kind of work that you were doing?
Well, if I was going to be bringing in women to learn about technology, um, it was going to be important that they experience the right culture. I think you want to learn alongside, because these people would, these companies would be teaching and their staff would be teaching. It was important that I got a real sense of what their employees were like, the working environment, um, because potentially at the end of the program, these women might want to work there. So I wanted to really ensure that it really was child friendly. They really were practicing what they preach. There's a lot of companies out there that say that they are promoting diversity in the workforce. They want to get more women in through the doors, but I think you want to see how those women are treated, um, and also, like, how are candidates treated? If I was an external person coming in and just getting a lay of the land, how would you treat me? You don't know me, and I'm coming in with a baby because I'm still on maternity leave, but I would like to work for your organization.
Because that's the real you.
That's the real me. And you know what? That's something I carried forward with, when I was looking to get back into the workforce. I went to interviews with my baby because I didn't have an option. I didn't have childcare. Yeah, I was still coming in as myself, and I would be the person that they would be hiring, regardless of if I had this baby next to me or this toddler next to me. But this is my current
Mm.
situation, and what's in my brain is still absolutely valid and relevant, and I can still hold a conversation. But it's up to them to be open-minded about the scenario.
Yeah. My gosh, I really feel like you're a change maker.
Rule breaker.
Yeah, because, by being so bold as to bring your kids in and say, listen, I'm still good and I know it, even if I have these children. It's like, you're changing perceptions. You're making it, I mean, you can't make something acceptable until you actually put it out there.
Absolutely, and then I'm a firm believer of, you have to be your authentic self. If you really believe something, you want other people to do a certain thing, you have to be willing to do it yourself. And I really believe that people should be able to bring their whole authentic selves all the time to work. Just be
Mm.
yourself, and that's how I conducted business, because I thought there's no other way. If you really want to relate to people on a very human level. And I found I had my best conversations actually with the kids next to me. There was no
Right.
meeting that
Yeah.
didn't go well. We had senior execs, leading the kids in the meeting. And I thought, wow, if you bring out the humanity when you're fully
Yes.
yourself. I had, you know, sea level people feeding my baby a banana. And I thought that was just the most excellent scene ever.
Well, you create
Oh my
connection
goodness. I mean, it's so hard.
because people relate.
Absolutely. Because, everyone knows a little person. And I think these little people bring such joy
Yes.
into the workplace. The days that we'd run the program, the
Mm.
excitement in the offices was just so hard to describe because it suddenly made it connected everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone suddenly felt, oh, this is wonderful. And it's a talking point, but it's also an indication of, okay, I like this little person and their mama is still smashing it. She is learning, she's excited to get into tech. Yeah,
Driven.
look at all she can do.
Yeah.
And I want to work with this person. And I suddenly started seeing people who never saw themselves in tech thinking, gosh, I love technology. I love what I'm learning. And I want to work with this company because that teacher, that person that works in product, that's taught me over the 7 weeks, has carried my baby, has embraced me, has taught me, has made me feel welcome in this environment. And didn't have to, but they did, and they wanted to, and they fully got what I could bring to the table.
Oh, gosh, I feel quite emotional at the idea of that because I think STEM because it is so male dominated, it has lost that human touch, that nurturing, caring side, which is ultimately the reason why technology does drive forward because we're trying to improve the quality of our lives.
Exactly.
That's why it's so important for women to be part of STEM because we're not just saying, oh, equal rights. We're saying women bring something very unique to the table, and it's so important that it's included.
Absolutely. I think that there's someone who often cites the example of, how the seatbelt was created by men initially. And obviously the shape of a woman is completely different. So
Mm.
even something as basic as that, if the woman is not going to be protected by this device that's been created by men, literally for men, then then it's pointless. It starts at the very beginning. The thought process has to be inclusive. It has to be inclusive of, disabilities and different sizes, ethnicities, languages. There's so many factors, and I think unless you have a true diverse workforce, these things will be left out.
Yeah, it's
But
actually horrifying that they have been left out because,
yeah,
I mean, we are doing this because we're human. We're not doing this because we want to make more money or build taller buildings or,
exactly.
conquer, divide and conquer. We're
Yeah,
actually doing this because we want to improve the life that we're in, um,
exactly.
and the future of our children. And I just, it's amazing that it's been reduced to something that is insignificant. I mean, I feel like we are moving into an era of change where women's voices are actually carrying weight,
Yes.
but it's quite horrifying that it was cut out for a period of
It's
time.
scary. And then, as we talked about briefly earlier, the first coders were women, and it's
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that they were not recognized properly until recently. Because I just remember being, in class, and I'd never heard of Ada Lovelace until a
Mm.
couple of years ago, and I feel like that should have been common knowledge. That's something that should be taught at schools. This is something that our boys should know about, not just Einstein. I think very unfortunately, a lot of the scientists that we think of and mathematicians, they're all men, but there were definitely women there, and they're not
Yeah.
been acknowledged. And I think it goes back to schooling. It needs to be introduced a lot earlier and normalized. And this is why I really
Yes.
believe in the whole role model. We have present day scientists, engineers who are women, and need to be more recognized in schools. We need to have people going into schools so that they can see this is real life. This is now. Yes, lots happened in the past, but we have so many talented women. Flood them into the schools. Let all the kids see, the girls, the boys, that this is normal. This is the future. This is now. And there's, I think, just changing that thinking. And there's so much hope for the next generation. So much hope.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's jumping out at me listening to you and also attending a lot of women in STEM events is that it's so important for women to speak up for themselves, be assertive, be confident, and really knock that imposter syndrome style approach on the head, but not in the way that we've done it before, where we've been aggressive and basically tried to be men in dresses.
Yeah, I agree. It's that one
It's a
word.
different kind of assertiveness.
It's just being creating the space so you're listened to, and I think it's so
Yes.
important. It's not being loud, but it's if you're in a room and you're interrupted when you're trying to speak, it's calmly saying, "I have a point to make," not being talked over. And it's reinforcing that, even outside the meeting room, just making sure that there is a culture of everyone's voice should be heard. I think that's not too much to ask.
Mm,
That the men in the room like value the woman's opinion, because the day,
mm.
for a team to work, then every team member is important.
But in saying that, I can't help but take a look at the individual's belief in themselves, the
Yeah.
woman's levels of self esteem. What are your perspectives on that? Like, have you had a journey with that, or were you born confident?
Not at all. Oh my goodness. I was, in class and thinking even way back to secondary school, wasn't confident. I knew I could be smart. I wasn't like your natural genius at all. But I worked hard. But it meant that in class I wasn't the first to put my hand up, even if I knew the answer. I felt, oh, someone might have a better answer than me. And then it sort of
Mm,
followed me into sort of my first couple of jobs where I know what to say in the meeting, but I thought, oh well, that guy's going to talk anyway. He's always talking, so I'm just going to let him talk. And I wished I had been braver in those instances, just to voice my opinion, because mine was perfectly valid, and I knew what I was saying was right, but I didn't have the confidence at all. And it's so weird that the confidence suddenly came post, I would say post my second child, not my first child, surprisingly. And I don't know what it was, but I sort of had this period of reflection, and I made this very conscious decision. I was coming up to 30, and just thought, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? And I don't want it to be one where I am full of regrets, and I've missed out on many opportunities that I knew I had, because there'd been chances to run events and speak and organize things, and I'd backed out and I'd really chickened out of certain things. And I thought, I don't want to carry on like that. I need to make that decision. No one can do it for me. No one can force me to be brave. No one can tell me I'm good enough. I have to believe it. So it's a lot of personal work. And I think, as much as we want to make every woman confident, it really has to come from within. People can sort of help
mm,
to nudge you in that direction. I think that's where mentors and sponsors come into play. People who believe in you. But I think you have to make that decision to put yourself in what will feel like uncomfortable situations. But if you don't try, you won't know. And I think half the time we fear these scenarios because we've not put ourselves in it before. But sometimes it's actually not as scary. I remember when I first did,
yeah.
my first talk. I think it was probably about 200 people, and I was nervous. I would often back out of doing any form of public speaking. It just made me really nervous, butterflies, and I didn't like it, so I just would dodge it like a bullet. So I never go. And this was for Product Tank, which I felt, oh my goodness, it's going to be full of amazing people in product. I'm not really a person in product, but actually I was. I didn't even realize it, because because I was an entrepreneur, I'd not labeled myself as a product manager, but actually every entrepreneur is in some shape or form. You're building a product, you're creating something, and inadvertently you've learned the skills. You might not have had a formal qualification. So I had sort of talked myself out of it. I thought, oh, I'm not really a product person. But I said to myself, you know what, you've got to do it, because there are other people the same scenario who're scared. And you have to set that example that you can do it, actually anyone can, because my background is quite a zigzag, but no formal product qualification, but still had lots to offer the audience in terms of very practical things I'd done. So I think, yeah, if we go through that uncomfortable process of just doing it anyway, as they say, feel the fear and do it anyway. It literally is that, and it's not that bad. The talk was fine. I
Mm,
watched it back. It
yeah.
sounded okay. It was much better than I was projecting this horrible image that it was a disaster, but actually everyone said it was wonderful. So I think, yeah, just we just need to just embrace that fear and use it as the fuel and just go for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of women in STEM, they really are high
Yeah,
achievers.
yeah,
Generally, they have very high standards for themselves. They may be slightly
yeah. Hmm.
perfectionistic. We have a very rational, perhaps even binary way of thinking. And all of those things mean that we can be very hard on ourselves.
So true.
And so it's often quite a balance to hold that space where, I mean, I had a professor on the show talking about faking it to make it until, you get to a certain level where you've really clocked up a lot of experience where you don't need to fake that confidence anymore. But it is really tough, sort of, especially you mentioned that you're Nigerian. Like when you are putting yourself on the line, you're very open to being
Yeah, very
attacked.
true.
How do you cope with that? Because coping with that is then opens the door for, you know, pushing yourself further. But how do you cope with that initial obstacle of self-doubt?
Self-doubt. I personally coped with it by surrounding myself with good people.
Right.
I realized, you can't go through this journey alone. And my initial support system is, my mother and my sister, who are my number one cheerleaders. They believed in what I was doing so much, and where there were moments where I doubted myself, especially with just being able to run a business, it's very tough. My mom's an entrepreneur as well. We've got family business back home, and I'd go to her for some very practical knowledge where I had questions, and she was like, "Judith, a lot of this stuff you're going through is normal." I learned a lot on the job. She worked with her dad and her brothers and sisters, and nobody went into it knowing exactly what to do. And I think that initial frame of mind was really what saw me through. So I didn't go into it thinking that I'm going to be perfect day one. I knew that there was going to be a steep learning curve, and I embraced it.
And probably mistakes and failures.
Absolutely. And I was very open to it, which is very unlike me. But I suddenly found myself in this very unusual mindset where I was like, okay, whatever happens, happens. But I'm not going to not try stuff. And I will be very open to changing stuff if it doesn't work. And I got a mentor, and I think you don't even have to like label this person a mentor initially. This was people I reached out to industry that I truly respected, and I asked them to just guide me through this process. I didn't say, please be my mentor. I said, this is what I'm building, and I feel like our values are aligned. I'd love to run things past you. It didn't mean I went to them and said, answer all my problems. I would come with, some sense of what I would like to do, and then just have them guide me as to the best decision. And I think that's super key if you're going to engage anyone on that mentor level. Don't go to them expecting them to just sort of solve all your problems. You need to put that initiative in,
Mm.
and they'll respect you for that, and they'll be more than willing to give you their time, and also be respectful of their time. So that's really what helped me get through that imposter syndrome. But other than that, I didn't feel that I was less worthy than anyone else to do what I was doing. I felt like I was super passionate about solving this problem, that even though I wasn't, and I don't know how I got past this, but even though I wasn't a true techie, I was going to build this tech program. I was
Yeah.
going to learn. And I feel like we're so blessed with the amount of resources we have. Anyone can learn anything. There's so much available on the internet through blogs, and I am someone who learns a lot through reading other people's stories. I read loads of blogs, listened to loads of podcasts, And I feel like you find your medium for learning, and you really, really go into it, and just accept that, you know, nobody's perfect. Even, professors are still learning. There's always something new, something changing.
Mm.
No, apps are never finished. People are constantly iterating, and I think that's life. If we accept that it's a constant iteration, then you don't have to be perfect.
Right. And no one person has the right answer.
No.
We're all just trying to figure it out.
Exactly. Even
Mm.
Elon Musk, he hasn't got it sorted. So I think that gives all of us
Right.
comfort. He's not perfect at all. There will be flaws in different areas of our lives. And I think the sooner we accept that absolutely no one is perfect. I adore Oprah, and I know she's not perfect.
Ah, I adore
I,
Oprah.
but I think it's just being kinder to ourselves and accepting that
Mm.
this life is a journey. It's not tick done. It will constantly
Yes.
evolve. There is no full stop.
But I think it's safe to say that we have come from an era where it was about showing the right answer. It was about, saving face. It was about putting on a smile when actually you're kind of suffering inside. And we are moving now into a mentality where it's okay to be struggling. When you've got celebrities saying, I've
Yes.
gone through depression, I've done this and that. Like, it's not, people aren't having a moan. And I don't think they're really attention seeking, even though it does look quite
Yeah.
narcissistic. I think it's more of people just
Mhm.
saying, look, I'm just being human. And we all go through ups and downs.
Oh yeah, it's refreshing. It's refreshing, and I think I feel quite lucky in that when I started off in entrepreneurship and entering this world of STEM, there was a massive wave in openness. And we see these startup postmortems and people just being very, very transparent about the journey, and how it's not linear.
Yeah.
And there are so many, it's quite an emotional
Mm,
journey, starting something, learning something new. It's not going to be easy. And I think people showing that, people that we respect as well, and people who have achieved great things, but have come out and said, actually, these are the struggles I went through. You suddenly feel okay, okay, it's okay to not be okay.
yeah.
And so
And that,
then there's also now, yeah, there's the awareness that we have to look after our mental health.
yes, yes. I think that's a significant part of why things are changing is because people are talking about mental health finally and the importance of emotional well-being. And that sort of old boys club mentality is really looking archaic these days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, just even that sense of community does help a lot with mental health. I mean, there's some amazing women in tech groups. So there's a variety of groups for all sorts of people. And I think just knowing that you have a support network, whether it be virtual or in person, that you can tap into and sort of share common challenges. I think that's becoming a lot more of the norm now. People are being more open. I think initially there was a lot of secrecy when you're sort of working on something, building
Struggling.
something. Yeah, and just there's like a more of a sharing culture. Open
Mm.
source clearly has been quite big.
Well, it's a Me Too thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like do not suffer in silence. There are
Yeah.
so many people who have been through the same and who can share. And I think that's the beauty of it, these communities who can share their hacks to feel better, whether it be
Yeah.
mindfulness, meditation. I think,
Mm.
that's you can see that sort of being incorporated into, the coding boot camps. Wellness is very much at the core of their programs, which I think is amazing. I think I saw one that has a happiness coach, and I think that is so crucial.
Mhm.
Learning something as
Mm.
tough as coding language can take quite a toll, and it can be quite lonely if you're sort of sat at the computer just sort of tapping away quite a lot of the time, and maybe you can't crack something. You need to be reminded you should take a break. You should be eating well. You should be just having a walk, just thinking about how you can recenter before you tackle it again. And I think that is so beautiful to see. And in startup world as well, you can see many technology companies really taking it seriously how their employees are doing. And I think that's the
Mm.
future. That's sort of where we need to go. It needs to be there from day one.
Yeah, and I think from listening to you and my own personal experiences, it feels like we need to teach our young how to be resilient to bullying.
Yes. Oh, so true. So true. And also just resilient in really following their hearts. I think back
Yes.
to myself as how old was I? Probably about 12 or 13, where I really wanted to stick at chemistry and physics. And I just think, had those teachers not talked me out of it,
Mm,
I would have probably been on a different path. And, you know, they I don't know if they were being lazy or they didn't have the tools to support me, but I feel like that was not my choice. I was forced into switching, and I wished I had been able to carry on. And I think, how do we equip our young with the tools to really be able to make informed decisions,
mm.
um, ab- about like the different career options, and about helping them really discover what they really care about. I think.
So maybe it should be more about allowing young people to find themselves earlier,
Yeah,
because when you talk about teachers not supporting you and opportunities being shut down, we're really
yeah.
talking about adopting people's uh, outdated beliefs.
Oh, completely, completely. They had a very fixed mindset that
Mm,
it was over for me. There was just no chance I was ever going to learn certain
mm,
things. And now, in retrospect, I feel, hindsight, I think I could have. I just needed a little bit
mm.
more time.
But
Um,
but as a mother yourself, it must be really difficult striking that balance between letting kids discover themselves and knowing that they are going down the wrong path because of your own wisdom and experience.
Very true. I think, obviously, I've had the opportunity to have sort of a conventional upbringing where, we were either expected to be a lawyer, teacher, banker, doctor.
Mm,
And now, having had this experience in entrepreneurship and experience the world of science and technology, I am conscious that he experienced, my first son, at least, who's a bit older, and he's starting to think about what he wants to study at school. But also broadly, I want them to experience everything. I want them to learn as much as possible about different types of careers, and I do obviously worry that I might try and impose my views like my parents
mm,
did, because we think we know best, and we feel like we have the information to make an informed decision. But I think what I'm conscious of is giving them the tools to make the right decision about what it is they truly enjoy. And I do hope that I'm patient enough to just allow that to happen naturally. Whether he decides, and the girls decide to go down the science or the arts route, I will be supportive, because I think ultimately that it's their decision to make, and I'll try my best just to give them the right resources to make that informed choice.
mm. Yeah, I think as parents, perhaps we feel that it's our duty to determine their path. But actually, when I look back on the way I was parented, I think what would have been most useful is my parents teaching me how to have confidence
Yes.
and how to cope with failure and just more of those generic skills.
Yeah, it's true. It's tough, and I think growing up, I don't know if I didn't want to fail, and I wish I had. I wish I had that sort of feeling that it's okay, just try again. Um,
Mm,
Mentality a lot earlier.
yeah.
I do try and instill that in the kids, and I think maybe it's through storytelling rather than just saying, "Oh, just try it again."
Mm.
Yeah, I need to sort of use myself more as an example, and hopefully it will sink in. And I think that's
Maybe it's about talking to children as adults,
Yeah, yeah,
giving them that sort of respect.
exactly. And it's so true. They are smarter than we give them credit for. I know my 4-year-old
Mm,
knows exactly what I'm saying half the time, and it's amazing. And I think
mm.
that's something that
Because they're so intuitive, aren't they, at that age? It's more about being heart driven
that
rather than, having all those societal sort of expectations and distractions
exactly.
and
And I feel like, they're so
conditioning.
pure. They when they feel, and they
Mm,
say it as it
yeah,
is, and it's beautiful just to watch.
yeah. But the impression I get from you, having heard, and actually imagining you in a boardroom with your kids, is that it seems like you have gone full circle in the sense that you've gone through that sort of like journey of trying to prove yourself in your career, and then you've become a mother, and now you're moving more into the tech for good space, and the result of that journey is that you are becoming or are very much in your authentic self.
I mean, I've never felt more
It's
connected
almost
to the real me. Yeah,
who
which
you are.
it's so. I think
Yeah,
that's where the confidence comes from. If I'm completely honest, it's not really status or anything like that. I think it's just for the first time, just
yeah.
feeling like this is me, and it's like take it or leave it. And I think the beauty of it is when you do get to work with amazing people who've chosen to work with you, you know that they've done that because they know the real you. Like there is no hiding. I
Mm,
really do put myself out there, as I really am. I've taken the kids to
mm,
talks, sat the baby on my lap while I've done a talk, because that's me. That's how I am. If it was important, been I breastfed all the kids, and when they're young and they won't take a bottle, then they're coming with me. So just just really
yeah.
being that authentic self has really meant that I feel like I can do anything, and it's a nice feeling.
I wonder what came first, you accepting yourself or people accepting you for who you are?
It was me accepting myself, 100%. I think
Mm,
when you do that, you project that confident person, and I think people are naturally attracted to people who have a sense of who they are. I think you don't want to be someone who's sort of blowing with the wind, and
mm,
and can't make up their own mind. I think and you attract people like you. I think it's nice,
yeah.
because you want to work with good people. You want to have good conversations, and I think there's a certain force that comes through, positive energy, when you are, the best version of yourself. But yeah, you have to believe it, and it will sort of emanate, and people will feel that.
Yeah, yeah. So with this journey you've been on, do you feel like you now have it all?
I think I'm very content. It's a nice feeling in that I know that, I fully believe in the journey. I don't think this is it. I think I will continue evolving for the better, but I think I'm going into it knowing that, um, I know myself, and I know for, like what I stand for, what I won't settle for, and that really empowers me to sort of navigate, and make sure I'm making the right choices, and yeah, just going into this with my eyes fully wide open, um, as they say, taking no prisoners.
It seems like all this wisdom you've clocked up is as a result of experiences and maybe a correlation with your age. But what would you tell younger girls who are considering a career in STEM? Like, what advice would you have for them?
I would say don't be put off by the numbers. I would say go into it knowing that you are a very valuable member of any team that they're lucky to have you. But go in and think of what difference you want to make to the team. Be collaborative and keep learning. Get a mentor, but more importantly, continue to experience different things. I think don't limit yourselves initially. because you just don't know what you'll enjoy doing. I think in the world of STEM, there's so many different elements and there's so many different parts of an organization you can be a part of. Don't be closed-minded. Don't feel that if today you decide you want to go into product, that you must stay in product for the rest of your career.
Mm.
Be very open-minded about opportunities because you don't know when you'll sort of land on one. You might be working on a project for someone else and suddenly decide, oh my goodness, I'm really excited about learning JavaScript
Yeah.
today. And go and learn JavaScript and figure out how you can apply it to work. And perhaps you might want to move team in a couple months, but don't close off, your mind to new experiences because I feel like the learning journey is constant, and the more open-minded we are about um, how we evolve, I think life just becomes so much more interesting, and there is no full stop.
Mm. Yeah. And knowing that you're Nigerian, from what you said earlier, um, is there anything extra people of minority should bear in mind? Because it's a competitive world out there, and it can be scary. Like, is there any like insider tips?
Yeah, I mean, um, I personally believe that I've never gone into any room with sort of a label on on my head, and I feel like everyone should go in just thinking about your individuality and how you, as a person, not your color, not your gender, but just how you can contribute to the team, but really own it. I think going in and feeling like you're completely equal is very important. I think you mustn't go in with the mindset that you're a token member of the team or anything like
Mm.
that. It's super important.
Celebrate being different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's yeah that that's often what you hear, and there's I guess firms like Slices shout about when they do have a minority in their team, but you don't have to be their token person. I think you go in, you own it, you be you, and don't be
Mm.
afraid to really talk about your heritage, and it's not sort of making you different. And I don't like the word different in that way. I think it's important that you just be you, just be you, and
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
everyone. I see everyone as the same. And that's
Yeah.
how I approach it. I don't go in thinking, oh, I'm the Nigerian in the team. I think no, I'm the person bringing this skill set. I can do this, and I'm going to own it.
Wow. Oh, so empowered. I love it. Oh, you've just been such an amazing guest on this show. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed this chat.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. That's it from my STEM guest this week. Gosh, I'm absolutely convinced now that being a trailblazer, which is often a very lonely road, is exciting and it gives you an edge, and it's something extremely positive. And after the conversation we've had today, any kind of negative attitudes towards being a minority have been completely obliterated with my guest's positivity. I feel empowered from listening to her own empowerment. And one thing I can definitely say from our conversation today is that it is so important to know who you are and celebrate that. I mean, it is a real advantage in knowing what skills you bring to the table, and that we're all so unique as women in STEM. Thank you all for listening, and don't forget to rate and review the show, and catch you next week